episode 102 of School Librarians United. I'm your host, Amy Herman. This podcast is dedicated to the issues and challenges school librarians face every day. As a school librarian in my 14th year, I found myself asking the question, where is the podcast that will help me do my job? I wanted a podcast which addressed the nuts and bolts of running a successful library program. I don't claim to have the answers, but I hope that this is a platform to share resources and exchange ideas. Now is a perfect time to mention that all the ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast by myself, by my interview guests, and by listeners who contact the podcast are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. When incorporating research, I always make sure to cite my sources. So whether you are a novice or a veteran school librarian, this podcast has something for you. I'd like to extend a very special welcome this week to our listeners in India. In the last few weeks, listenership in India has grown such that India is now the third largest number of daily downloads outside of the United States. And friends, this is why I keep international postage on hand at all times. I welcome you and all listeners to reach out with your feedback, episode suggestions, and questions either on Facebook, Twitter, or the email address schoollibrariansunited@gmail.com. If you include your mailing address, I will be sure to send you a podcast sticker. Before I share my conversation with today's guest, Lisa Brakel, I did want to confess that I myself am not a district librarian. I have, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, worked in 4 libraries for each year for the past 7 years, this year being no exception. I've shared my perspectives and strategies for survival in episode number 23, Traveling Librarian, both in and out of the loop. I've included a link in the show notes. For me, I can't recall, but I think there's one pro tip I want to make sure I mention if I haven't already, and that is when you cover multiple buildings, it means that sometimes you're expected to buy each school's spirit wear. And this is a colossal waste because I have found that my building assignments change from year to year. So instead, I recommend that you create your own spirit wear if you cover multiple buildings like I do. So what I did was this. I designed my own logo using the district logo, and then I included the word librarian, or you could use teacher librarian or a media specialist or whatever your title is. And I had that embroidered on a fleece jacket and a fleece vest and a hoodie. And now I am never mistaken for a guest teacher or a building sub. And the best part is I don't have to change my spirit wear when I'm driving to my next building after lunch. And now for today's episode, District Librarian, and my interview with Lisa Brakel. Lisa Brakel, welcome to the podcast.
It is my pleasure to be here with you, Amy.
I'd like to congratulate you, first of all. You recently received the May Mentor Award. You've been chosen because you exemplify, quote, sustained and exemplary guidance, support, and inspiration to colleagues in the school library profession, end quote. Our state association's annual awards ceremony was held just recently. Would you mind sharing with listeners just a little bit about your mentorship during this past year?
Well, I was nominated by 2 people that I worked with, one through our state organization and another one through our association in our county. And I was surprised that I got 2 people that nominated me for the same award. I didn't expect to be nominated, of course. I don't think anybody ever does. So I found it interesting. The first person that nominated me is our past president of our state organization, MAME. And just so the listeners know, MAME stands for the Michigan Association of Media and Education. Even me, I've been in this organization for so long, that name is just a little difficult to remember sometimes. But anyway, so the MAME member that nominated me is our immediate past president, and she and I communicated a lot during her time of hosting our conference and then becoming president, and then during her immediate past president role, because I was the one that kind of encouraged her to run for president. And And so we've had lots of conversations, and just by chance. And I'm sure she's had lots of conversations with other people. I didn't realize that our conversations really were me mentoring her, but I suppose they were because I had walked that path before her. So I could speak about my experiences. And the other person that nominated me was an instructional technology specialist who worked at the county level at our ISD. So the ISD services everyone in the county and provides support in many different ways. And one of those ways is through technology. So this person was new to the county, and I usually work closely with our instructional technology people because I always feel like I learn a lot from them. So I invited her to meet with me on a periodic basis to help me with some things that I needed help with, and I thought she's the one to connect with. And we connected, and then we started doing several things together. And along the way, I learned she was a book lover, and she was very active with her public library. And I said, there's this new program at Wayne State University where you just have to pick up 15 hours of credit, and then you can become a certified school librarian. And she went, really? Well, I'm in. And so she did that. And then she needed somebody to do her practicum with, and that was me, because it was a convenient relationship and we knew each other, we could work together, and I fulfilled the requirements to be a supervisor for that practicum.
I really like that in each of these cases, you were a mentor to somebody who is entering the profession, and you were also a mentor to somebody who was having been so well established in our profession that they are now seeking a leadership position at the state level. So a mentor to those coming in and those who are just taking on new challenges within our profession. So I think that's really impressive. When I first learned that you were a district librarian, I figured that you were sort of the equivalent of a unicorn. But more and more, I am meeting district librarians, or more accurately, librarians who find themselves now covering an entire district. It might not have started out that way. Have you always been a district librarian?
No. And okay, I don't even know where to start. Let's start with this. No, I have not always been a district librarian. I started my teaching career as a band director, and I was a middle school band director for 11 years. And then, I've done other things, but it was all band and it was all music. And so then I reached a point where I wanted to be able to do something different. And I had a husband who wanted to work on a doctorate. So I needed to get myself to that higher pay scale in the public schools, which is often the addition of another degree or some other certification. I needed to also be marketable in case we started to move. So my sister just finished a library degree at Indiana University. She loved the program. And it occurred to me I could pick that up I already had a master's degree in education, and I decided I could pick up the master's degree in library science. And that would put me at the plus 30 rank that most school districts do offer. And it would give me another avenue to become employed through. And I had worked in a library all during my undergraduate work in music education. So it seemed like a no-brainer, and so I did it, and I had a blast. I took a leave of absence, got my degree, went back to band directing. We did move with my husband, who got his doctorate, and I have done band and library through the years. But when you're raising children, librarian work seems to work better than band work, because with band, there's so much extra. You have contests and festivals and private lessons, and you really have to be passionate about that job in order to be successful. And I feel that I was successful. Some people, I think, when I tell the story, they're like, oh, she burned out. She wasn't any good as a band director, and she went on. But actually what happened was it's exactly what I described. And then I had 2 children, and I had, I needed to be more focused with home than work. And so the balancing act seemed to work better with being a librarian.
Well, I have a sister who's a music teacher and in the middle school, and I know her evenings are just interrupted with rehearsals and dress rehearsals and play practice and then doing concerts and multiple concerts and again, like you said, festivals and travel. And so I totally understand that. That makes a great deal of sense.
Yep. And you really have to, as a music teacher, live that way to be successful, I believe. And some people just love that balancing act and they thrive on it. They have lots of energy. For our family, it didn't work so well. So off I went to be the librarian. Now, your other question was, so yeah, I'm kind of a unicorn. And in my mind, I have a certain picture of what a district librarian looks like. And in our state, you would be called a district media specialist because that's our term in Michigan for a school librarian. And I have worked with district people. I have worked with state level people that have that title, like the state librarian, although I worked in Indiana and in Utah, and we actually had a person at the state level who oversaw the school libraries and could be consulted. They could come and visit your district and work with you. And large districts have, a district librarian who maybe sits in an office. I've met people like that in Texas who they're at the central office and they're an administrator and they manage all the school librarians and all the schools and they make the big decisions. And I'm not that person. I am the person who I got hired to do middle school library, and then there were cuts. 2008 was not a good year for Michigan, and so then it fell to, well, what's going to happen here? Are we going to close all our libraries, which they did at one point in 2010, and or are we going to open them and do it with less staff? And I stepped up to the plate and I said, we can do that. And I gave them a plan for how we could do that. And they went, okay, you're on. That was that same superintendent that, I've worked with for many years. And off we went. And we sort of, like in the pandemic, we sort of built the plane while we flew it.
This is typically where I ask my guests to describe their library. Would you describe your district?
How much time do we have? So I work for a very small school district. And every time I say that, everybody says, well, how small is it? And I don't know what our real enrollment figures are, but I really should know that off the top of my head. I would say we have we probably have around 3,000 students total in the whole district. We have 4 elementaries, a middle school, a high school, and then we have some special entities going on, like we have a virtual academy, we have a middle college program that we do in conjunction with Schoolcraft College, and we have, dual enrollment program like many high schools have. So even though we're small, we have a lot going on. And our superintendent, I came to the district in 2008, and he was a principal in the district. He grew up in the county, so he has a vested interest in the county. He'd worked at several different school districts, and then shortly after I took the job there, he became the superintendent. And he was kind of a younger person to have a superintendent position. And so he has been, I think, a real leader to say, well, we may be small, but we can do lots of things. And so he's been very progressive. And when you drive through the district these days, it looks very, very different than when I came into that district in 2008. Anything you visually see structural upgrades that he's been behind. And, like our virtual academy and our middle college program are all outgrowths from his viewpoint of we want to be progressive here and we want to grow. Um, so, uh, so it's a good place to be. And he has a very, I think, a very good attitude about school libraries. He sees that we need them. He's always been, we need them. Now, sometimes I'm not sure that he always knows why, and he doesn't always know exactly what we do, but he's always willing to listen. And, I've never had a conversation with him where he didn't say, I get it. And, and then he would talk through it. And sometimes his ideas are better than mine. And when it comes to libraries, even where I think I know everything, but then his viewpoint changes my mind. And so it's been great because he has supported school libraries and made sure we had them. And there are schools that are much bigger than us in the county, and they have let their librarians go.
I have to jump in here. I've been in several districts, and my exchanges with my superintendent have been nil. And that is probably more because I'm a building librarian and you are a district librarian. So I think it does speak to the fact that you represent all of the libraries, and it really, when he talks to you, he is in effect impacting the library programs across his entire district.
And I like it better when he listens to me, but
Well, and this has come up several times that, that people who aren't librarians don't have an appreciation for just how multifaceted our profession is, and how many skills and, roles that we bring to this, in this case, your district. So, I think that it has been part of our self-advocacy that we've had to speak up and make sure to remind people of all the things that we bring to this role that we serve in the school community. Lisa, if I'm not mistaken, I believe you found yourself in the same type of predicament that many school librarians find themselves around the country, and that is that your district, due to budgetary cuts, has decided to keep on one librarian and staff your buildings with technicians or assistants. Can you tell me, that must have been discouraging on so many levels, and yet you got to keep the libraries going?
Well, yeah, it was, I was fortunate because I think a lot of times when this happens to people, that the administration makes those decisions, and their knowledge of how school libraries work and can work is limited. And so I was fortunate that when it happened, the district shuttered their libraries. There were none of them open, and they laid off their 2 librarians. And that was in response to the budget cuts. They also let all the music teachers go. And I believe at that time, I could be incorrect about this, the PE teachers. And there were some politics involved in all that. And I can't even remember what they were. But I remember writing to the superintendent and saying, you need libraries. You can do it with less staff. Here is one proposal. And he responded to that. And we then ran with that idea. And so we sort of built the plane as we were flying it. Like, what can this look like? And so using the training that I had, I understood that I should be responsible for all things that I had training for, that had been part of my degree program, which would be things like cataloging and instruction and material selection and the management of the whole circulation system, K through 12. How do we meet the needs of everyone, all the teachers, all the students? And so I had to then figure out how to do that. And I went through several different formations of people that would help me. Like, I started out with 2 aides, and then eventually we decided 3 was better. And then we just opened a new school 2 years ago, and I keep telling them 2 librarians now would be better. But I'm not getting very far with that. Or, another aide would be better. And so far, no go on any of that. But But we're still functioning, and I feel good that while other districts have totally shut their doors, bigger districts than us, we at least have not shut our doors, and our kids get books, and we purchase for our collections every year, so there are always new books coming in. They do have me for instruction. My aides, every year that I work with them, and the aides in their aid group, they negotiate their contract. And so a couple years back, they all went, this would work a lot better if we didn't have to go to bid day and you had to deal with the fact that you might not get all of us back. I mean, it was working out. They'd go to bid day because they were all high seniority. I would get them all back. But we all held our breath going, what if that doesn't happen? Then Lisa has to train someone. And that's not so good. That'll take her time. So they went to their union and they said, can we make media aid an interview-only position? And that was their wisdom, not mine. And I encouraged them in that. And that flew. So now if one of them steps away, retires or something, it will be an interview position that we can select probably from the other aid pool and hire somebody that has maybe skills, to fit the need of the library. But every year I work with them, they get better trained. They get better at book covering and, and organization and in public service, how we deal with the public and understanding about how libraries should, we don't tell everybody everything, there's, you have to appreciate that some students don't want everybody to know what they're checking out. And, so every year that passes, it gets better, but we figured that out as we went. And, I think that any of my aides could now go and apply for a public library job and so, and get it because they've developed valuable skills that would serve them well outside in a different work place. And so I think that's been good for them.
I just say something right there, though, because I don't think all districts have made those types of arrangements that you have. Because I know that when we've had vacancies in our library assistant positions, quite naturally, what they do is pull the assistants who might not have a job assignment at that time and put them in the library position, and it really. It is, I don't want to call it an injustice. I think what you're doing is setting somebody up for a certain shock because on both our ends, because when you put somebody who is an outstanding classroom assistant or an outstanding special ed assistant into a library, really very few of those skills transfer. Very few. Because what the skill set that is required to be a school library assistant, quite honestly, is an entire different skill set than one would use to assist in a special education room or in a first grade classroom. It just doesn't work that way. And I unfortunately know that that's been a solution many districts have used to make sure that their assistants don't find themselves without a job. But the learning curve is severe and very steep. And as the person in charge who has to train people, I can't imagine. Well, I'm going to back up right there. I can't imagine because I have worked with assistants, and I've been so fortunate to be able to work with assistants who come in, having worked at other districts, and it's been a joy, and we learn from each other, and it's so rewarding because there are some things that I just wouldn't think to do until somebody, showed me. And then I've worked with people whose last job was assisting in a kindergarten classroom and has no familiarity at all with the inner workings of the school library. Yep. So I feel your pain. I truly do. I'm questioning, you mentioned the different kinds of librarians who oversee programs in a district. Do you try to get to all your buildings? Are you managing from a distance? I realize we're in a time of pandemic and COVID, but under what you'd use more as typical circumstances, are you managing from remotely? Are you trying to to do that, or are you finding yourself moving amongst the buildings?
Well, in a regular school year, my teaching assignment is to be half-time at the high school, half-time at the middle school. But as we've, learned to build the plane as we learn to fly it, my district has also understood that I work as a consultant to the elementary libraries. So they've given me great freedom in the fact that if I say, today I'm going to go to an elementary, there's no question. They've even gotten to the point where you don't have to tell us that. Just go do it. And so I have the freedom to go wherever that I'm needed. I spent a lot of time at the middle school because I realized a couple of years ago that that's really where I can make a huge difference. Now, somebody might argue with me and say you could really make a bigger difference if you went to the elementaries. But I don't feel like I can go to 4 different elementary schools and teach back to back every day and really be as effective as I can be if I collect those 5th graders when they come into our middle school and say, now you're going to learn about this library. Because I realized about 2 or 3 years ago, that's what I can do effectively and manage 6 libraries. Because a lot of my time is spent with purchasing and administrative type duties, and I can't teach all the time because then those things will flounder, and I can't do all those things all the time because then I won't reach the students and the teachers who really need to see how libraries function and operate and how wonderful they can be. If you never go out and do what it is librarians, school librarians are supposed to do. So I have struggled to find the balance in it all. And so it has worked best for me to really focus on my 5th, 6th, and 7th graders and to teach lessons in technology and library usage and about books and then to free myself to be able to go hither and yon to take care of everything else. And earlier in this conversation, you asked me about, being a district librarian. And I said, I know about district librarians in Texas, and they work as administrators. And I've known people at the state level. And my job in this district is district librarian, but I have staff, but I don't really get to pick that staff. I don't evaluate that staff, and I don't have any administrative duties because I'm not an administrator in a school. I don't have my administrative certification. Now, if I worked in a public library, I would be well qualified to supervise staff because I have a master's degree in library science from an ALA accredited university. But in the school world, they don't view me that way. I'm just the librarian, and I'm in charge of all things library. But when it comes to staff, the administrators are still in charge. And so many times my aides will come back they go, well, I had my evaluation today. And I'll say, how'd that go for you? And they'll go, well, it went well. This is what he said. Usually they did a good job and just keep up the good work. And there's never anybody that comes to me to ask any input about how do they do their library work. Has it been good? Has it been bad? Overall, it's been good. But I just think it's funny that they don't even consult with me. I don't even know how those decisions are made.
Well, and I think that it is mystifying because this is the person you work with, they report to you, and yet the person who ultimately evaluates them is not somebody they see every day. And no offense, the administrator truly doesn't understand what a good job looks like because they're not librarians. They're not librarians. And I really, I agree. That's a flawed system. I will just go on record and say it resembles systems I have worked for my entire career. So as a school librarian, I have been asked for input but ultimately the evaluation is not one that I sit on. And the evaluation is, I make comment, meaning the principal comes to the library and says, hey, I was just wondering, I have to fill out the evaluation for, your assistant, and how is it going? And, it really is a conversation that probably should not be taking place in the library, in earshot, of the assignment, of the assistant who I work with. And so you're right. That doesn't make any sense at all. And, we have the opportunity to train our assistants. It is in no way a substitution for a master's degree in library science. And yet I am very lucky because I have had librarian assistants who are amazingly talented and have skills that I don't have, especially when it comes to bulletin boards, which are the bane of my existence, and showcases, which I also equally despise. But that's also because I'm working in multiple buildings. You described teaching in 4 elementaries. That has been my job for 7 years. And I'm not a district librarian, but I am a building librarian who just happens to have 4 of them. But, I'm curious. It's, your skills as a communicator. It seems like they must be incredibly fine-tuned at this point. I mean, obviously, you're not only communicating with all of your assistants, but you're also communicating with your superintendent, something to be fair, I've never had to do.
Yeah. I don't know. I do spend an awful lot of time involved in communicating. And sometimes I go home at night and I think, what have I not made clear? Why did I have to spend, that number of minutes per day talking to this aide or that aide? What is it that I should write and put in the manual so they could consult that? But I think a lot of times they just they're doing a lot for our district, and they have a lot of things come across, and they just need a quick answer. And I happen to I've given my cell phone to everyone, and I've explained to my administrators I may be on that cell phone a lot because this, that, or, and they just accept it. And that's just the way we run and roll. And that also helps me be in touch with 6 buildings, and, so it seems to work, but I never go home ever and say, I was excellent today. Because I go home every day and I say, I came up short in at least 4 different ways today. And you have to be, I think, in a position like this, okay with that. And because this is a job that I have watched other professionals leave and not want to do. I know people that when times got tough, they didn't go talk to their school administrators, or maybe they couldn't. I think I live in a little bit of a magical situation. And they chose to just leave, just go find another job, or retire, or go back to the classroom. And maybe because they didn't try to communicate, or maybe because they just couldn't communicate because the opportunity wasn't there. The doors were all shut to them. So I think that it would be helpful if administrators would, in tough situations, communicate with those library professionals that they have and say, how could we do this? Because I sure don't want to see our libraries close. Now, what's a plan? Could we look at a plan? And it may not be ideal. This is not ideal. There's not one day of my life where I go, this is ideal. That we need so much more than we have. And the superintendent hears me harp about that all the time. But
I'm curious because, I think that I see, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it's the fact that you have to compromise so much on things that you in your heart, if there was, one of you in every building, these compromises wouldn't have to happen. And I've had similar conversations with myself because as someone who covers 4 buildings, I am very well aware. And I've talked to, and I've been so fortunate to interview people who have been one librarian in one building. And it's a little hard not to feel a little envious of that situation. But I think we can agree, though, that you've made this work. And instead of burning out and saying, this is I'm leaving, and similarly, I've covered 4 buildings for 7 years now, and you actually can get good at it. And
Yeah.
there are people who are more effective at this than others. And I sense that even though you may feel like you've made compromises, you also can see all the success and the wins that you have had across your district every day. Lisa, I've known and worked with you at the state level for many years, and I know that it is possible to be good at our jobs. And I know it is possible for me to be a very effective librarian in spite of the fact that I'm spread across 4 buildings. And I know that you are an incredibly effective district librarian, or else you would have bid adieu to this job a long time ago. And so while you do see yourself having to make compromises every day, you also walk away every day very successful at certain aspects and feel good about the things that you were able to achieve.
Yeah. I have my days, but overall it's tough. And when I have conversations with those individuals that you just mentioned that work at one building, I think that's a dream. Think about those relationships with teachers that you can build. Think about how you can really get to know your collection and help sell it and help turn people on to certain, segments or sections of your library. Think about how you can connect with curriculum and really become effectively embed yourself in that curriculum. And those are things that I sometimes have a magical relationship with someone and we do something together and I feel quite good about that. But more often than not, I think many teachers may see me as just sort of this figment that enters their life and then I'm gone. And, we'll start something and I'll say, well, I'm not going to be in this building tomorrow because I'm going to be in the other building. And it becomes frustrating for me and for the teachers. And sometimes I think they view me as a ball dropper. I can use a story that just happened this week that I'm still feeling a little bad about. We started a new advanced language arts program for our 7th grade and our first 7th grade and 8th grade. And so they wanted some books. And so our procedure is that you let me know you need some books. You let the curriculum director know you need some books. And then he has to approve the money for it. So sometimes we have to wait for that. And then I get approval. Go ahead and order those books. And so then it has to go and you have to wait for the PO to be written. And we had a change of our CEO retired. And then we got a new, financial CEO. And so I'm watching all that and I'm still waiting on the PO, and so I finally got the PO. And about the time that I got the PO and I could push the button and order those books, the teacher reached out and she goes, how's it going with those books? I'm sort of wanting to get started. And I said, well, I just ordered them. Now, in her mind, we talked a month and a half ago about those books. And so I am a ball dropper in her mind. What she doesn't know is all the things that I see that our administrators are doing, but it's not like clockwork. It's just not flowing and so there she is. And so there's frustration on her part. And so for a while, I think she'll think, well, Lisa's a ball dropper. And then later I'll come through for her with something else. It's so much that's out of my control. But they go, but you're the district librarian. Well, it means nothing. I'm at the mercy of everyone else. So,
well, and I think that it is, I know that in a time of Amazon Prime, we've all become our expectations of the turnaround and trying to get materials to us and getting a PO. I know in my personal circumstance, I had some discretionary funds from my PTO, and the deal is if they'll simply reimburse you when you get the things in. And of course, so you have to front your own money. And, you talk about procedures and how you're going to get these materials. Well, when I buy things on Amazon Prime and then get reimbursed through the PTO, those things are here the next day. But if I have to get a PO number from our business office, I still haven't placed my follett order because my business office has to enter every single book I ordered into their form. And I said, wait, let me just give you the follett order. And they said, no, the business department says we have to do it this way. We have to enter every item that you're ordering. I'm like, this is a year's worth of books I'm buying. And you have to enter every book into this form. So yes, I mean, it is ridiculous, sort of the red tape that you have to jump through when, it does help you understand though better why teachers oftentimes elect to build those classroom libraries, dare I say, because there is that immediacy of access. And they know that they can count on having those books when they need them. And that's where I truly feel like I need to do a better job, because we have gorgeous collections and all of us can support our buildings. But it's important that the teachers feel like that access is there for them. And you're right. When we have to put through POs and go through all those hoops and jumps, and it really does slow the whole process down. You have obviously delineated the responsibilities between you as the certified media specialist in the district and then your library assistants. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, because it sure as heck has happened to me, but my students will assume my assistant is the librarian.
Mm-hmm.
And
I thought that, Babby.
Yes. That's kind of a hard pill to swallow when and I don't want to be the mean person who says, well, actually, I'm the librarian. And I truly could not do my job without my assistants. I don't mean to be snarky at all. And I honestly, the way my job is designed and configured, I could not get along without my assistants. But it is very hard because they're the ones in the building every day.
Yep. And I have that too. At the middle school, we have a person there that's 3 days a week, which may be more than I'm there. And at the high school, we have someone there every day of the week. And so, yes, there's confusion. So I just make sure that whenever I instruct, I introduce myself as the school librarian and my aide as the media aide. That's their official title. And I feel like that's probably the best I can do. But I have had to fight some battles along that line to make sure we're using our proper titles. And I felt like I could professionally do that we use our proper titles. And I feel like that's really all I can do. It's,
right.
Because the administrators will back me up on that.
My favorite is I refer to us as a team. And I said, what? We work as a team, and I point to my assistant. I said, you know what? One of us is behind the desk, and they're going to be beeping the books for you because I teach my little elementary guys. And I'm going to be up here. I'm going to teach a lesson. I'm going to get you the books, and we're all set. So we work as a team. And so I refer to us collectively as a team. And I really, really refrain from using the word assistant. But you better believe that signature on my email makes it abundantly clear who the librarian is in the building.
Yep, and mine too.
So the obvious upside to being a district librarian is that everything is streamlined. You are your own department chair. When you make decisions, they are applied across the district, and you have this sort of consistency of policies and procedures. I want to think that is really going to make things easier on some level for you and the team you work with.
You would think so. When we came back face to face this fall, we had to change many of our policies and procedures. And that meant that I not only had to educate my aides, but I had to educate everybody else, the teachers, the administrators. And so I decided before we started, I would base every decision I made on the realm study and follow the science. And I noticed that, was it Friday? I noticed an email they've come out with some new findings. So once I got everything established, then I had to change a few things along the way. And so that was hard. Have you ever tried to change the policies and procedures that you have set up and ingrained in everybody's mind, and then on as though it was just a whim, you changed them all to meet the current demands of the job? And so I'm really behind on everything this year because it took a long time to change procedures and policies and to set up ways to deal with things. And we didn't have like, how do you pass out books and you really aren't fingering them all up, and you make sure that the students can just grab the book that's assigned to them. And So I haven't even started going to teach. The kids used to come to me to the library to teach. Our library is closed. And so I'm going to classrooms, and I haven't started that yet. We will start after Thanksgiving, and I will start with just the 5th grade. And then we'll see if I can handle doing more, because it's all different and it has really been demanding. And it's been hard.
Pushing into classrooms is something that many of us are finding ourselves doing, also pivoting. So pivoting from the virtual to the hybrid. We've now pivoted several times back to virtual because of the recent surge in Michigan, as you well know. I really find so much of what you do to be inspiring, because you see the challenges for what they are, but you also aren't trying to flee. You're trying to stand your ground, and you want to figure out the best way to be able to service your entire school community at all these buildings. And you've targeted places where you can succeed and your talents are used the most. Can I ask, what do you love about being a district librarian? Because, I don't think those circumstances are going to change for you anytime soon. What do you find that you absolutely love about what you do?
Well, I love libraries and I love reading, and I think that everybody needs to have that experience, to love a library, to love a book. But I'm kind of an odd duck in the fact that I love to organize, and I absolutely adore organizing. And so if nothing else, when I leave this job, it will be well organized, because when I came into this job, it was not well organized, and I am still organizing it. And along the way, I've had help. We had another district librarian, and she's somebody you might be familiar with, Amy Cody, and she and I worked together. And at one point, we did a job share, and she started to organize the elementary schools, which had been set up by paraprofessionals and or parents who had no knowledge of cataloging. They did the best they could, and it worked, and they got books to kids. And that counts for a lot. But there was a lot of cleanup to do. And so cleanup we have. I've changed, with the help of my aides, every spine label in the district and and every library, and weeded, and and then we also, along the way, I took over the book rooms, because every school had a book room. And with that, then I found myself ordering materials we adopted the Engaged New York curriculum, which is very book heavy at grades K through 12. I have ordered thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of books, and made sure they were organized and available to teachers and classrooms. And I consider all that to be job security, but more so, it to me was like, you're going to do what? And this curriculum calls for what? How many books? Oh, can I help? Because I can't stand it if I don't. I have to organize this. And so, so that's what I really love that. But I also really love the fact that no 2 days are the same. No 2 days are the same. Every day there are new children to deal with. Every day there are new teachers to deal with. Every day there are new administrators to deal with. And every day has a different challenge. Somebody wants to try something new in the classroom. Maybe it requires materials or input from me. And so then we jump off that diving board and into that pool and do that for a while. And when I taught music, when I taught band, there did come a point in time after 11 years of doing that where I thought, if I have to teach a child how to count a whole note one more time, it will drive me crazy. And because you teach that lesson every year, year after year after year after year. And I am not the type of personality that loves to do that. I love change. And so I love the fact that every year there's a new book. I could take a new book to a kid and enlighten them or turn them on to this. And no 2 days are ever the same. And that is what I love.
So I want to tie this with a bow. You're conducting. You're conducting. You are being the conductor as the district librarian. You conduct. You point to certain sections that need to do, and when you work with your assistants, you are giving them the downbeat, and you're telling them when things are going to start and when things are going to stop, and you are being the orchestrator and the conductor that you've always been. The difference is now you're orchestrating your library system.
Yep, and I love being in charge. If you want to go full circle, we started this with you got the main mentor award. And I never felt like I mentored either one of those people that nominated me. I felt like I worked with them and I offered my opinion, which I love to do. And I love to have a controlling hand. You can ask my family. Because I don't know why, but that is just my personality. And so this job certainly allows me to shine in that fashion too.
You've landed well, and your district, I'm sure, has recognized the value of making sure that they support you as you need to be supported in this very challenging and demanding job that you have. Lisa Brakel, I am so grateful that we were able to make this conversation happen. Friends, it is the holiday season, and we all have things to do, and Lisa made time for me and all of my tech snafus, and you are incredibly generous. And you know what? You're a mentor to me because I've oftentimes asked you questions and you'll give me exactly the kind of honest feedback I need. So thank you very much. Lisa, would you give us an idea where we can follow you on social media, please?
Well, I am on Twitter. I use that as my professional avenue of communication, sort of, however you describe that. And I had to look it up, but it is at, what did I tell you? At
Brakel underscore Lisa. Brakel _ Lisa.
Yep.
Lisa, I hope you enjoy your Thanksgiving holiday, and I look forward to working with you for years to come.
I hope so. Thank you, Amy.
I am so grateful Lisa was able to join me for today's conversation, especially as we were at the time both getting ready for the busy Thanksgiving. And I appreciate that all of our Thanksgivings probably looked a little unusual this year and perhaps smaller in scale. But nevertheless, it's still a really busy time of the year. And so it was really great to sit down and talk with Lisa. Usually we are at committee meetings or at conferences, and both of us are doing 12 things at once. And so it was really nice to be able to sit down and ask the questions I'd love to hear her answer. So if you found this episode helpful, please share it out with your team, your PLN, and on social media. The topic of our next episode will be Library School Response, and my interview with Dr. Pamela R. Moore. I hope you will tune in.